It's 2 o'clock on Friday and I'm live with you from the New Forest. I'm just going to flip my gaze over to my iPad and just check that you're seeing what I'm planning for you to see and make sure it's all working properly, so bear with me. Okay, I'm supposed to remember to keep talking to you while this happens, otherwise you don't know I'm here, do you? So let's have a look. Right, looks like I might be there. That's good. Excellent. Okay, make sure I've got the volume turned down there and put it so that I can see if anybody comments. Okay, so Belinda's here and Mary's here. Welcome to both of you. How nice to see you. Thanks for joining me. And Candy's here. Fantastic. Welcome, welcome. It's always funny when you start one of these off because you start off talking to your phone. In my case, I'm using the camera on my phone with absolutely no clue as to, first of all, what anybody can see. Maybe I've forgotten to press a crucial button. It's happened. And if there's actually anybody out there, if I'm just talking to myself. So it's really nice to have people right from the start who are here. So thank you. I'll just move my iPad a little bit so I don't have to lean too far to one side. Okay, Carol's here too. Hi. So tell me, is the sound okay for you? Because I've got the sound turned down, otherwise we get this kind of disconcerting echo effect. So tell me if the sound's all right, if you can see everything all right. Wait for you to catch up. Belinda's saying hi to everybody. So Belinda knows, I think Belinda knows Mary and Candy and Carol, so that's good. Rosie's here. Hi Rosie, very welcome to you. Oh, well, it's a funny old time at the moment, isn't it? Week 2 of lockdown, is it week 2? I can't remember, of lockdown 2.0. I haven't been anywhere except the post office, so my life is really not very exciting at all. And it's so nice to be here, and even if you can't be in my craft room crafting with me, at least we can chat to and fro here, and I can share some stamping with you. Ruth's here too. Hi Ruth, and Sue is here, and Lorraine. My goodness, that's so nice. A whole crowd of people. So it's lovely to have you here. I'm going to chat for a little bit and then I'm going to tell you what I'm going to be crafting, and then I'm going to turn the camera around so you can see my desk and do a little bit of crafting. And my plan is to end up with some completed cards to show you, which will hopefully be inspiring. Okay, so Carol's saying hello to everybody and Lorraine's saying hello to everybody. So that's really, really nice. So, what's your week been like? I mean, you know, as I said, the high point of my week has been going to the post office, really. Tomorrow morning I'm doing some crafting again in a Facebook Live with some of my team, which I'm really looking forward to. I've sent out some packs of things, and we're going to be joining together and chatting online tomorrow. We usually meet in person, but of course we can't do that, so we've got to make the best of the opportunities that we do have. And what else do I plan to do this weekend? We're having an Indian takeaway tonight, which is exciting. We don't have many takeaways normally, but my husband declared that during this lockdown we ought to be supporting local businesses, and I said absolutely. So we had fish and chips last week on Friday. We have a little fish and chip van that comes round. I live in a little hamlet. We've got nothing here at all except a post box. So the fish and chip van does come weekly, so we had fish and chips from him, which was very nice. And tonight we're having an Indian from a local takeaway in Leamington that's just won, something like best Indian restaurant in the south of England, I think was their award. So that should be good. We have had food from there before and it's nice. I'm not sure what we're having next week, but I'll be able to tell you, won't I? Next Friday I should be able to tell you what we're having. Okay, so Carol's saying hello to everyone. Rosie's saying hi to everyone. Carol's saying, so is she. Is that you having an Indian takeaway, Carol? And Sue is saying hi to everyone. So that's really, really nice. So what's anybody else doing? Type it in. Tell me what you're doing, or what you're not doing, or what you wish you would be doing. But preferably what you are doing this weekend. I'm sure you're all doing something this weekend. While you're doing that, I will have a little chat to you about what's happening in the world of Stampin' Up. It's a funny sort of time at the moment, isn't it? Because we've got Christmas coming, but none of us really know what we're doing about Christmas. I'm certainly still crafting up a Christmas storm, and I know some of you are too. So I've had, I don't know how many stamp sets out on my desk this week, making Christmas projects. And as a demonstrator, I've been able to see the new things which are going to be coming your way in January, and that is really exciting. And I'm not going to show you today, no sneak peeks today, but I have got a big pile of things just within arm's reach, which are absolutely fantastic. The new catalogue is amazing and you're going to love it. So more of that nearer the time. What else? The Curvy celebrations are available now. You'll have seen me posting about that, or you can find out more about that on my website. So they are going to be in the new catalogue that's coming in January, but we've got the chance to order them early. So 2 stamp sets, some pattern papers and some dies. So you can contact me if you want more information on those, or have a look on my website. And that's happening now, which is wonderful. I'm going to see what anybody else is doing. Rosie is having an Indian next Friday. She had a class this morning, and Rosie's got her new sneak peek products as well, which is fabulous. Rosie's a demonstrator on my team. Carol's saying, oh, Carol's looking forward to tomorrow's crafting. She's not having an Indian, but she's looking forward to tomorrow's crafting. Okay, I'm glad that you've cleared that up. Carol says, as long as Russell pays for the takeaway, that's even better. Well, it is. I mean, we don't have separate bank accounts. Everything goes into one pot, and we both spend from it. So he is paying, but then so am I. But that's fine. I don't mind that. Sandy's here. Hi, Sandy. Welcome, welcome. Oh, so any more? No, nothing else at the moment. All right, so what's anybody else doing this weekend then? Type it in and let me know. I've updated you a little bit on Stampin' Up, and perhaps I'll just tell you a little bit about the crafting that I'm going to do. I'm doing something called a one-sheet wonder, and I know from the names of the people who've popped up who are watching live that most of you know about one-sheet wonders. So it's a way of preparing a whole sheet of card and then cutting it up so you get lots of projects from just one set of crafting. It can mean that you can get quite speedy projects, and it also means that there's a little bit of an element of uncertainty, because for any of you who've actually done something like this, if you stamp a piece of card and then cut it up, you often end up with unpredictable results that you couldn't have guessed about and couldn't have planned for, and often they're better than something that you might have thought of doing deliberately. So I do like a one-sheet wonder. So this one is one that I've actually designed myself. I don't have an awfully mathematical mind, but I did sit down with some grid paper, and I drew out to scale a piece of A4 card, and I worked out what I wanted to do with it, and I've cut it up, and I will show you my plan in a minute, and then I should be cutting it up live, and hopefully it will all work exactly as I hoped it would. Okay, so oh, Mary's saying hi everybody. She's just found the comments box. Yes, sometimes it's hidden, Mary, isn't it? Okay, Ruth's looking forward to tomorrow as well. That's fabulous. Belinda's highlight of the week was coming to collect her class, and she's just disappeared off the screen. So I'll hopefully come back to that, Belinda. Rosie's looking forward to crafting tomorrow, and she's doing crocheting. That's more than I can manage. Prudence is here. Prudence, hi. I haven't seen you in forever. Welcome. What's Sandy doing? Paring down her must-have list from the new catalogue. Yes, Sandy's a demonstrator on my team as well. Yes, my list's really long too, Sandy. Okay, Belinda's saying hi to Mary. She's glad you're here. Rosie's saying hi, Mary. So that's really nice. I don't think I can scroll up and see the comments, but oh no, oh, perhaps I can. Perhaps I can. So there we go. That's something I didn't know. So let me find, what was Belinda saying? Yeah, a highlight was a trip to the wood store to collect her classes. She says she now has lovely projects to make and is looking forward to tomorrow's crafting too. So if you're not looking forward to crafting with me tomorrow because you haven't been invited, that's because you're not a demonstrator. So that might be something to think about. We get together and craft, and it's lovely. There's nothing like crafting with friends, is there? Okay, Ruth saying, Ruth is relining a cutlery canteen. Oh my goodness, Ruth. Excuse me, I'm just going to have some water. I can feel I've got a tickle coming. Yes, Ruth is relining a cutlery canteen. She says all the little indentations for each handle and point for 8 place settings. And why is she doing it? She had a moth attack. Oh, Ruth, moths are not good, are they? We've got moths in our house, and I've been battling them for about 3 years now. I am winning the war. There is no doubt about it. I hardly ever see them now, but we still get the odd one or two. I think there's been a huge increase, hasn't there, in moths in houses recently. I don't know whether mine are clothes moths or carpet moths. I found them in both places and they all look the same, but either way they're not something you want. I wouldn't know how to begin lining a cutlery canteen, Ruth. What are you lining it with? Tell us what you're lining it with. Okay, so Lorraine has been sorting Christmas cards and filling in the little book that she made at the extravaganza. Yes, we did a Christmas list book at my all-day Christmas class, which was another online class. I did it live, and then some people came live. Some people caught up on video afterwards, and we did a list book. I'm so glad it's useful, Lorraine. Okay, what else have I missed in all that excitement? Yes, Annie says moths, little blighters. Yes. Ruth says, what did I use? What did I use to get rid of my moths? I shopped at Lakeland, and they have got a whole range of moth products, which tells you what a problem moths are. There is a really, really good carpet spray, which I've sprayed all around my carpets with. There are things you can hang in your wardrobe. There are all sorts of things. So I recommend going and having a look at Lakeland online and ordering some of their stuff. It really does work. So I'm going to cough now. I thought I'd got rid of that frog. Let's try again. Water. Okay, Ruth says she didn't know what to use to line a cutlery canteen. She brought thin stick-on flock sheets, which I'm saying very carefully. That sounds like just the job, Ruth. You must take a photograph when you've done it and show us the finished thing. Presumably you can't get the lining out, otherwise you could use that as a template. I don't know. Gosh, I'll put that on my list of things I'm really glad I don't have to worry about. Okay, so I was talking about the crafting. So I'm going to be using the Snowflake Wishes stamp set, which I know that some of you have already. So that's good. So you'll be able to craft along with me exactly if you want, or you'll be able to do something different. And I've got a couple of cards I made using completely different stamps and colours, which I'll show you at the end to give you an idea of something different that you could do. So we've come to the point at which I'm going to cover up my camera lens and then turn my camera down so you can see what I'm doing with my hands. I have to flick a few settings, and they're inevitably underneath the clamp holding my phone in place. So sometimes it takes me a minute or two, but bear with me. I'm going to cover up the camera lens so you don't get seasick as I move the camera around and then fiddle to get it right. And then I'll take the post-it off, and I'll probably still have a little bit of fiddling to do. So bear with me for a couple of minutes and then we'll get stamping. So I've covered you up. Ruth's saying there's not much lining left on her camera, on her canteen. Oh, that's not good, Ruth. I'm very sorry. Moths really are such a pain. Right, now let me see if I can find a way through for my finger to go in my phone stand and find the settings I need. Oh, I might be there this time. Quite often I end up putting some kind of fancy filter on my face that is not something I would normally ever use, and certainly don't intend using. Right, let's have a look. Okay, so, okay, so it's upside down on my phone, which is always a bit disconcerting, and now I've got to wait for my iPad to catch up, and it is showing it round the right way, so that is a bonus. Okay, I'm going to see if I can get that a little bit higher up. So look away now if you're prone to motion sickness, because I won't be able to get it right if I can't see what I'm doing. Okay, that's a bit higher, I think, just so you can see a little bit more of my desk at a time. Right, so now I'll move my grid paper around and try and make sure you can see what I'm doing. Okay, oh, Ruth says there's not much, no, there's not much lining left. That's really not good. Rosie's saying, oh, she's got out the snowflake stamps. Excellent. And others. As you hate Christmas, that's a miracle. Let's see if I can change your mind, Rosie. Belinda's saying it looks good. Great, thank you. Okay. So I'm hoping things are fairly straight. All right, so I just brought my catalogue just to show you that on page 38, these are the stamps I'm using, just in case you don't have these snowflake stamps. If you haven't got them, you really, really need them. They are absolutely beautiful. They have a kind of a watercolour effect on the images. So some areas are kind of darker than others, and then there's some really nice words in here too. So yeah, great stamp set. So let's move that out of the way. I've already mounted my stamps on blocks, so I shouldn't need the box unless I've left one out that I wanted to use. So let's move that away. I'm going to bring in some Whisper White card. So this is an A4 sheet, but if you want to try this on a smaller scale, just have a smaller piece. It will work in just the same way, no matter what size card you're using. But I cut this up and I made, let me have a look, 1, 2, 3, 4. I've made 5 C6 cards plus 2 note cards using this one A4 sheet. So that will give you some idea of what you can do. So Sandy's saying she's been using lockdown to perfect her card crafting, but she's sick of Christmas cards. As you can see by the quantity, she's graduated to Valentine's Day. I mean, Sandy, honestly, Sandy, you are just amazing. You know, I'm still making Christmas cards, and I will almost certainly be still writing Christmas cards on about the 22nd of December, because every year I say I'll be ahead and I never am. So you're now doing Valentine's Day. I haven't even thought past Christmas. So yes, I'm very impressed. And Pam's here. She just got home from work. Hi, Pam. You're very welcome. How lovely to have you here. All right, so I've got a piece of A4 card. I've shown you I've got my snowflake stamps. I'm just going to use 2 ink pads here. So I've got Balmy Blue and Night of Navy. I really like this particular One Sheet Wonder because I've literally used 1 stamp set and 2 ink pads. You can add in lots more colours if you want to, but I've just got a light and a dark of the same colour. So if you want to go, you know, a little bit more interesting maybe, or less traditional, you could have turquoises, you could have purples. The snowflakes look lovely in pink, even in golds and things like that. So just pick 2 colours that you really like. And you want a sponge wedge for each of them as well. So I just cut up the stamping sponges. I cut them in half, and then I cut each half into 3 little wedges, and I staple a piece of the matching card on as a handle. In theory, that's to help me not get so inky, but it doesn't really work. As you'll see later, I shall end up with blue fingers by the end of this session. But yes, you just want a little piece of sponge, 1 for each colour, because that way your ink pads won't get contaminated. You probably will also be pleased if you've got some scrap paper by you, because we're going to do some stamping off. Rosie's saying hi to Pam, and Ruth is saying she hasn't started her Christmas cards. Never mind, Ruth, you'll get there in the end. You always do. Pam saying hi, Rosie, and Ruth saying hi, Pam. Tigger isn't speaking to me. Now, Tigger's your cat, isn't he, Ruth? Or she? Is it a he Tigger or a she Tigger? I don't know. I should know by now. Pam says, oh, Pam hasn't started her Christmas cards either. Okay, well, maybe today is the day. Just maybe, if you like this, you'll do some, and you'll end up with a pile of cards at the end of this session. So I've put my stamping mat under my grid paper because I'm using photopolymer stamps. However, I've got to remember that my stamping mat is not as big as my card. So I'm going to start with the left hand side of it is going to be over the mat, but the right hand side on the bottom is off the mat, so I'll have to move it round, and let's hope I don't forget and wobble off the side. That has been known to happen before now. All right, Sue's here. Hi Sue, that's my sister, Sistery Sue. I'm one of 4 children, and it's a real treat to have Sue here. I haven't seen her for too long. Lovely to see you here, Sue. Okay, so I'm going to start doing some stamping. I'm going to start off with the largest images. So I'm not using all the snowflake stamps, but I've picked these 2 as my biggest images. And I always start with the largest images simply because they take up more room. So once I've got them on my card, it's easier to bring in the smaller images and fit them in. If I start and stamp lots of small images on, I may end up with not enough space to fit the big ones in. Sandy's saying she put stamps on her cards yesterday. She'll put them in the post this weekend. Oh, Sandy, my goodness. Yes, I'm feeling completely inadequate now. Rosie's saying, hi, lovely Sue. And Pam's saying, oh, dear Ruth, surely nothing to do with the flea and worm treatment I delivered yesterday. That was for Ruth's cat. Yes, Yes, veterinary problems. Okay, so bigger stamps first, and I always stamp the larger stamps in the lighter colour, because that way, once you've got everything on there, everything seems to be more or less the same. You don't have things jumping out at you quite so much. If I stamp my large images in a dark colour, those will jump out and you won't see the overall look of the piece of card. Pam's saying hi to Sue as well. All right, so I'm going to get going. So I've got Balmy Blue and I've got one of my large snowflakes, and I'm literally just going to stamp over my card, leaving some gaps in between, going off the edge, and I don't think about this too much. I think it starts to get difficult when you start to think about what you're doing overly. So I just kind of try to put my mind at least partially in neutral. My sister would probably say that's something I don't find difficult. And do some stamping. So there we go. I don't think you can see the whole thing here, but if I just move that slowly, so again, as not to give you motion sickness, so hopefully you can see the edges. I've just stamped that across my card. So I'm now going to bring in another stamp, and I'm going to use the same coloured ink, but this time I'm going to stamp off once. So this is where your scrap paper comes in. So I'm stamping off, taking some of the ink off there, so that when I stamp this time, it's a little bit paler. And I'm hoping you can see that. The light in here has suddenly got poor. The sun's gone behind a cloud. And I'm waiting for a new light to arrive, but it's not here yet. So I'm hoping that you can manage with the light that I've got. So Sue's saying, hello ladies, and she says, if my mind's in neutral, I'm okay, but reverse isn't great. Very wise, wise words. Okay, so I'm turning the stamp round as I stamp. I'm sometimes turning my paper round. If I forget to stamp it off, it won't be a disaster. So this is really, or it should be, low stress stamping. Don't worry about what you're doing. It'll all be fine. All right, so I'm just going to cover up that ink pad so I don't lie my arm right across it. I'm bringing my darker colour now, and I'm going to stamp some of the other images. I'm again going to start with the bigger ones of those. And this time I'm going to stamp the Night of Navy off twice. So it's really, if I can try and get everything in shot, if I stamp that on here, you can see it's really intense. If I stamp it off once, it's paler again, and the third time it's much paler. So I'm going to stamp off twice and then stamp on my card. So who's stamping along with me? Trying desperately to remember where the edges of my foam mat are. I don't very often stamp a whole piece like this and needing a foam mat underneath it. And I thought about using two, but I thought one of them is bound to move and then I'll end up with a gap in the middle. I'll fall down with my stamp. Sandy's stamping along. Lovely, Sandy. Make sure you add a photograph or send me a photograph of what you do with what you're stamping today, because we would love to see it. Okay, so that looks okay. I can always come back later if I want some more images. And now I've got a slightly smaller snowflake. I'm going to stick with Night of Navy, and I'm just going to stamp off once. So this will be slightly darker, but because it's smaller, it won't necessarily look a lot darker. So I'm leaving some white space in between because I want something left to sponge over. Belinda's stamping along, Rosie's stamping along, and Lorraine's stamping along too. Lorraine is using snowflakes as well. What's anybody else using? I haven't tried it yet, but I have in mind to try doing this with a whole load of different stamps that all say happy birthday, because I thought that might be fun. So there's all sorts of things that you can do with this. Right, and then I'm going to bring in my last snowflake, which is this little group. This is my absolute favourite in the whole set. And I'm going to use Night of Navy again, this time straight from the ink pad. And each individual image on this stamp is really small, and so although they're in a much darker colour, it's not too dominant. And I'm just filling in the gaps. Turn the stamp occasionally just so it looks a bit different. I love this stamp. You can line it up and make kind of snowflake garlands and streamers and all sorts. Sandy's stamping with snowflakes. Rosie's stamping with everything. Are you, Rosie? Are there any penguins in there? That's what I want to know. Rosie loves penguins. So yeah, I'm just looking where there are gaps and trying to fill them in. I may come back with one or two of the other stamps as well once I've done all this. I'm just going to give my block a wipe. As long as I don't wobble, that ink shouldn't transfer, but given that my mat's smaller than my card, I think discretion is the better part of valour. Okay, so now I'm just looking at it and seeing where I've got a gap that might need to be filled in. Oh, Rosie's saying no, she's not. She says she couldn't justify the set for one penguin. I know you've had penguin stamps in the past, Rosie, so I didn't know whether you had any to use this year. Never mind. What are you using? Oh, Belinda's not going Christmas at all. She's using floral essence and artisan texture stamps. Now that is something I would very much like to see, Belinda. I do hope you'll share your pictures once you've finished. I don't have the artisan textures stamps. They've been on my wish list ever since the catalogue launched, but so far I have resisted them. I'm not short of stamps though, so don't feel sorry for me. One more here. Okay, so I'm just going to lay that still for you to have a look at. Hopefully once everything catches up and you can see what I've put there, you can see how much stamping I've got on there. So there, so it's just, can I move it? Yes, I can move it further that way. It's just an all over pattern really of snowflakes. Now I could just cut that up and use it like that, and it would be very, very pretty. I could have stamped some of those in Versamark ink and then added, say, some silver embossing powder. That would have been really nice too. I wasn't too sure how long this was all going to take today, so I thought I'm not going to get the heat embossing out, but I think that's definitely something to do for another time. So that's my sheet ready for some sponging now. So Rosie is using Joyful Holly, Snowflake Wishes and Most Wonderful Time. That sounds lovely, Rosie. Right, I'm going to put my inky stamps to one side and I'm going to bring in my sponge. And I'm also, you can't see, but I've got a big splodge of dark blue ink on my desk, which I'm just going to wipe off. Otherwise, as we all know, that will transfer itself to my project. All right, so a bit of sponging now. So I've taken out my foam mat because I don't need that. I've got my piece of sponge and my Balmy Blue ink. It doesn't really matter which colour you start with, but again, I tend to work from light to dark because it's always easy to add more ink or darker ink. But if I start with the dark ink and then I put too much on, I've got nowhere to go really with the light ink. So in case any of you are not familiar with sponging or haven't done it very much, when I teach it, I always talk about dabbing the sponge on the ink pad. So just a few dabs like that, and then working it on the grid paper a little bit. So for two reasons. First of all, that kind of evens up the ink across the sponge. Now, I haven't got ink over every part of the sponge, but where there is ink, it's evenly distributed, and this is quite a new piece of sponge. Over time, that gets more ink on it. So that's just making sure I haven't got, for some reason, a big blob of it somewhere. I can also check how intense that colour is, so it's really quite light. And then I start my hand moving in the air before I touch the card, and it looks like that's going to be showing, so let's go for it. So I'm moving my hand in a circle in the air, and then I just come onto the card and I just keep that motion going. And it's important that you keep going. If you get a splodge or a bit that you don't like, or it looks uneven, just keep going. You can always come back and do something with it later, but just keep going. If you get a really big blob, you can stamp over it, or you can make sure that that's the bit where you put your sentiment. So I'm not going to cover the whole of my card in Balmy Blue. I'm just going to pick up a bit more because that had pretty much run out, and I'm going to come at it from another side and put some blue over here. Working always in a circle. From this end, and then once I've got a few patches, this will be number 3 of the paler ink sponged onto my card, then I will come in with some darker ink cautiously and add some of that too, and then I'll go back and forth until I'm happy with the way it looks. Okay, so this is not the finished thing, it's a little bit smudgy still, but that's all right. So here's my Night of Navy. Now I'm going to be cautious with the Night of Navy because it's much, much darker. So I actually rub quite a lot of that off until I'm sure it's not going to end up being really dominant. And then I come in with quite a light touch while I get a feel for how it's going down. Now I'm going for a kind of a random pattern of coloured ink on this card. We're going to cut it up, don't forget. So at the moment you can't really see exactly what the pieces are going to look like, which, as I said at the beginning, is part of the charm for me. But I'm just trying to make sure that there is some of both colours scattered across the card. So always check your sponge on your scrap paper before you go to your project. You can add more ink as many times as you like, but once the ink is on there, all you can do is hide it. You can't take it off. However, you often can hide it very successfully. So let me put that there for a minute. You can start to see how this is going to look. So I'm blending the two colours together so I don't have any harsh lines between the two. How are yours looking? Are you still stamping, or have you got to the sponging stage? It's all gone very quiet out there. I think you're all concentrating. So have a look at it. See if you've got any areas that you've missed. See if there are any areas where you've got any blobs that you'd quite like to go over again and just smooth out a little bit. Have you got any harsh lines between the colours? And every time before I put my sponge to the card, I'm moving it before it makes contact. Sandy's saying she's finished and it looks okay. Excellent. I'm glad. I expect it looks more than okay, Sandy. You do beautiful work. Rosie's concentrating. That's why she's quiet. All right, so I think I'm going to stop there. So, are your fingers as blue as mine? I haven't even asked you actually what colours you're using. You might not be using blue at all, in which case you won't have blue fingers. What colours are you using? Let's see if I can. Mary's saying, could you do the sponging before the stamping? Do you do last to knock back the stamping? I'm not quite understanding your question, Mary. Are you asking me if you can do the sponging before the stamping? If that's your question, you absolutely can, yes. For this, I quite like my stamping knocked back a little bit, but you absolutely could sponge first and then you could stamp. Candy's saying she's just watching, she hasn't a clue how it ends up. That's okay, Candy. With the wonders of information technology, you will be able to replay this afterwards if you want to have a go. Sandy's saying, unfortunately, the same can't be said for her hands. Yeah, I know, Sandy. Well, it's a sign of a good day's crafting, I think, when your fingers end up like this. I've given up trying to have beautiful, clean hands because, you know, it's just not happening. All right. So some of you are finishing. Okay, so Mary's saying yes, that's what she meant. Okay, so yes, absolutely, Mary. If you want your stamping to be a little bit more defined, put it on top of your sponging. And if you are looking for a kind of a more combined effect, a more blended effect, then sponge afterwards. But it doesn't make a great deal of difference. I could now stamp over the top of this if I wanted to. If I'd got any areas I really felt needed a stamp, I could come in and stamp on top. So Rosie's using Just Jade, Balmy Blue, Grey Granite and Highland Heather. Oh, and the kitchen sink. That sounds like a lovely colour combination, Rosie. I might have to try that one. All right, so I've just brought in my grid paper just to show you how I planned out my One Sheet Wonder, and you won't be able to see all of this on there. I'm not sure how high up I need to move it. Maybe about there you'll be able to see it, or most of it. Okay, so all I did was I just drew out my A4 sheet on here. And then I just thought about card front sizes and looked at how I could do it. And with a pencil and a rubber, I worked out how to cut it. So if any of you are going to cut along with me, I don't know, I shall cut very slowly and hopefully you can keep up. But if not, you'll be able to come back and watch the video and see how I cut it up. So Lorraine's using Balmy Blue, Pacific Point and Highland Heather and Gorgeous Grape. Lovely, some of my favourite colours in there. Sandy used Night of Navy and Coastal Cabana. Oh, love that turquoise. These all sound wonderful. Please, please pop some photos on. I really would like to see these. Okay, have I missed? I don't think I've missed any other comments. If I missed your comments or you've asked me a question and I haven't answered it, type it in again, because sometimes things go up when I haven't got my eye on the screen. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is, with my card at landscape, I'm going to cut it at 5.5 inches. All right, so that's the first thing to do. So I've got my trimmer, which I won't be able to get entirely in shot, but I'll do my very best. So I'm going to cut a piece off. I've got it landscape, so I've got the longest edge at the top, and I'm going to cut it off at 5.5 inches on the left. So I'm going to set aside the bigger piece, and this is my piece that's 5.5 inches wide. And I'm now going to turn that so it's landscape, and I'm going to take 2 pieces off it, measuring to 3 3/4 inches. Rosie wants to cut with me slowly, please. Okay, I'll give you a chance to catch up, Rosie. So here's my A4 sheet. The first thing I've done is put it in my trimmer at landscape and cut off a piece that is 5.5 inches here. So I'm hoping that that's okay. The next thing I'm going to do is to turn my card just through a 1/4 turn. So I've now got the long edge at the top, and I'm going to cut off a piece that is 3 3/4 inches, like that. And that's going to be my first piece. That's an entire card front there. So I'll set that one aside, that's ready. And then I'm going to do the same again. I'm going to cut this at 3 3/4 inches. So I haven't turned it, I've just moved it across and I've cut a second piece. So now I have 2 pieces here, but they are completely different to each other. Let's turn them that way as well. Hopefully you can see. I don't match them up. There we are. So they are different. The balance of where the snowflakes are is different. The balance of the inking is different. And that's what I really like about this. It's slightly unpredictable. Okay. And keep this last piece. So you've got 2 big pieces. You should have a strip left over. And I'm going to cut that at 3 3/4 as well. There. So that piece I'm going to use. This little piece is leftovers. I haven't got any plans for that, but who knows? I may well decide that I have. So on my cutting sheet, then we've cut this piece here. So we did the cut down there at 5 1/2. Then we cut across here at 3 3/4. Another 3 3/4, and then this little strip that was left we cut off at 3 3/4 there, and then this is our little spare piece. So now coming across, and the next thing I'm going to do is to cut, let me just check what I'm doing. Yeah, I'm going to cut this at 4 inches. So this is my other piece. I've put it in here, landscape, with a long line at the top, and I'm going to cut it at 4 inches. Okay, Belinda's using Gorgeous Grape, Flirty Flamingo, Pear Pizzazz and Crumb Cake. Ooh, yummy. That does sound really nice. All right, so that is at 4 inches. So this piece I'm going to come back to. The piece that I've got in my trimmer, I'm now going to turn round, and I'm going to cut that at 5 7/8. Like that. I'm going to keep this little strip, and this piece here I'm going to turn again and cut it in half, which is at 2 inches. So that gives me 2 strips there, which I'm going to set aside. All right, I'll just show you on my plan so that hopefully makes sense. So we're on the second half now. So I had this in my trimmer landscape, and I cut it at 4 inches. And then I turned that piece so it was landscape, and I cut it at 5 7/8 inches. And then I turned it portrait and cut it in half. So I had 2 pieces that were 2 inches wide, so I cut it at 2 inches. And then I've got this little strip left over, so I'm just going to cut that little tiny strip to 3 3/4 inches. Are you still with me, everybody? Okay, so this piece I'm going to keep. And this tiny piece, even for me, is too small to do anything with, so that is going in the bin. Don't shout at me. Rosie likes the sound of Belinda's colour combination. All right, so this is the piece I've got left. And I'm going to put it in my trimmer landscape and cut it at 1 1/4 inches. So it's quite a small piece there. So that's that piece. I'm going to set that one aside. Actually, I'm not. I'm going to trim a piece off it first. Sorry. So I've cut at 1 1/4 inches, and now I'm going to cut this to 3 3/4 again. There we are. Claire Murray's here. Claire, hi, welcome. So nice that you could join us. So what I'm doing, Claire, is I've stamped all over a piece of A4 card. I've then sponged ink onto it, and I'm now cutting that piece up to make lots of cards. So hopefully when it's finished, I'm going to upload it to Facebook so it's there permanently, and then hopefully you'll be able to go back to the beginning and see what we've done so far. But you're very, very welcome. Sandy says she's just keeping up. Okay, I'll try and cut a bit slower, Sandy. All right, so let me run through what I just did there again. So this was my leftover piece. I cut it at 1 1/4 inches. Set the big one aside. So that's my 1 1/4 inch piece. And then I turned it a 1/4 turn and cut it to 3 3/4 inches. So this is the piece I want. I'm going to set that aside. And again, this piece is too tiny for me to do anything with, so I am going to chuck that one in the bin. All right, we're nearly there. So this piece I've got left is a rectangle, although it's only just a rectangle. What does it measure? Measures about 4 1/4 by 5, I think. Yeah. So I'm going to put it portrait, so this is the shorter end at the top, into my trimmer, and I'm going to cut it at 3 1/4 inches. So it's portrait and I'm cutting at 3 1/4 inches. And I'm going to set this strip aside. I'm going to turn this piece and I'm going to cut this, and it's landscape now at 2 1/2 inches, which will give me 2 pieces the same size as each other. Okay, I'm going to set those aside, and I'm going to bring my last strip in, and I'm going to cut this to 3 3/4 inches. There. And this piece, I don't know. I probably won't do anything with that, but I'm going to put it at the back of my desk just in case something brilliant comes to me. All right. So what I will do, I will actually, thinking about it, I'll put a photograph of my cutting plan up on this page once I've finished as well. So you've got that and you can always save that then. I'm going to move this aside for now and show you all the bits. So there are lots of pieces here. And hopefully this is all going to show. Mel, hi, it's so nice to have you. Welcome. I've just been cutting up a sheet of A4 card that I stamped and sponged. You'll be able to replay the video once I've finished and see exactly what I did. But what I am going to do now is make all these into some very quick cards. So the time consuming part is the cutting. I think that's harder than anything. The stamping and the sponging is relatively quick. So these are all my pieces. I think you can just about see those. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sets of pieces which are going to go onto standard C6 cards, so cards I've made from half a sheet of A4. And then these 2 pieces here are going to go on note cards. What I'm going to do before I stick anything down is I'm going to come back in with my ink, and I'm going to sponge the edges. And actually I'm glad I kept those 2 little off-cut pieces, because I'm just going to try out both colours and see which I prefer. It will depend a little bit on which colour predominates on the piece, but let me just edge this with some Night of Navy, and I'll edge the other one with Balmy Blue, and then I can tell. My instinct is Night of Navy, but let's do one of each and see. And you could do the same with yours. You'll have some little offcuts like this. You can see what you think. Yeah, for me the Night of Navy has it. What do the rest of you think? Do you think Night of Navy? Or do you think Balmy Blue? I'm going with Night of Navy because your comments won't catch up in time. But tell me, and I'll maybe try it a different way next time. All right, so I'm just going to edge these with ink. So I'm just picking up some ink on my sponge, and then when I sponge the edges of card, I hold the card flat and I hold this at a kind of right angles to it, and I just almost scrape the ink off. So I scrape the sponge along the edge. Now I'm going for a relatively fine edge of ink, but if I want to, let me bring back my little scrap again. If I'm a little bit rougher with it, and also if I tilt the sponge a little bit across the card, I'll get a much thicker border. I hope you can see the difference there. I know sometimes people have difficulty with sponging. Try, if you possibly can. I know sometimes arthritis and other things make it difficult to hold things in your hand and work. But if you can hold it in your hand and sponge the corners, the edges, you will really find it a lot easier. If you put something down on a table and sponge it, you can do it, but it's much harder not to get a kind of a blobby finish. And if you're looking for something really quite soft, this is, I think, the easiest way to do it. That's not to say you can't do it any other way. But if you struggle with sponging, try this and see how you get on. So I'm working quite quickly because I cannot believe it's 10 to 3. Can you believe it's 10 to 3? Do any of you have to go and collect children from school or anything like that? Okay, Sandy's saying Night of Navy. That's a relief, Sandy. You're not looking at this and screaming, no, use the other colour. Seems like a very long time since I had to do collection from school. My son's shortly going to be 27 and my daughter is 23, so it's a while since I've had to worry about the school run. I can remember though that, you know, whenever it was, I think it was 3:15 my kids mostly came out. That time seemed to come around so fast in the day. I'd eat my lunch and then it seemed in no time it was time to get in the car and go and get them. Not that I didn't love them having them around, you understand. But that time is really precious, isn't it? When you've got just a moment's breathing space to get things done. So I'm nearly there. It's a good thing I can't go out and do something fancy this evening on Friday night, isn't it? Because my hands are going to be a disgrace after this. I find a certain amount of the ink washes off, but it doesn't all wash off. Be gone by tomorrow. I'm sure it ends up all over my bedclothes. Wake up in the morning with clean hands. These strips are just a little bit more delicate, so just hold them carefully to support them so you don't end up adding a crease into them as you're working. Oops, dropped that one in the ink pad. Never mind. Okay, that's all my pieces inked. And yes, I'm getting bluer by the minute. All right, so I'm going to move those sponges out of the way. And I'm going to bring in my cards. Hopefully, I haven't got so much ink on my fingers that I'm going to end up with blue fingerprints on my cards. All right. So to start with, I'm just going to put the pieces onto my card bases. So I've got some of these are portrait and some of them are landscape. All right, so these are the portrait ones. So I've got my favourite multi-purpose glue. And of course I could do a matting layer for this, but actually when you ink the edges, you get the illusion of there being something darker there. So I'm not putting mats on these, but you certainly can if you would like to. So this is the piece that is 5.5 by, let me find my piece, yeah, 5.5 by 3 3/4. So I've got 2 of these. Using this glue means that I can just slide those pieces of card and get everything straight. I'm actually just going to put a new piece of paper here because this is so inky. I don't want to get it on my card bases. All right, so that's my first 2 cards almost done. They just need a sentiment. I'm going to bring in the 2 landscape cards because again I've got 2 similar ones here. And this is what these long wide strips are for. They're going to go across like that. But first I'm going to stamp a sentiment on here. So I'm going to bring back my mat. And I've got my stamp from the same stamp set I've been using, which is Snowflake Wishes. And this says Snowflake Wishes for a Merry Christmas. I don't suppose we will have snowflakes at Christmas, but never mind. Okay, Lorraine's just discovered her A4 piece wasn't A4. Oh no! I've obviously cut a little strip off previously. It's about ½ an inch too small. Doing the best I can. Oh, I'm really sorry, Lorraine, but it will be fine. You can improvise. Just work with the sizes you've got. It'll work. Sandy got left behind on the second half of the card. You have to watch the replay. Okay, Sandy, that will hopefully work for you. And I'll also put up a still photograph of my cutting chart as well, which will hopefully help. There we go, Snowflake Wishes for a Merry Christmas. And here's my other landscape base. There we go. So now I've got my sentiment on there, I can place that strip of card and make sure it goes where it looks right. So that's one. The second one is going to be exactly the same. Oh, I should be so pleased. I shall have 7 more Christmas cards by the end of this session. I'm catching you up, Sandy. That's my second one, so that's those 2. I'm going to bring in the note cards next. So these are smaller, and the pieces I'm going to use for this are these 2 smaller rectangles, and I'm going to stamp a sentiment on here as well. Let me just wipe that ink off, and this one will just fit. All I have to do is decide whether I'm going to put it right in the middle or whether I'm going to put it over to one side. Let's have a look. In the middle, I think, because if it's over to one side, there's not much extra space, so I think it'll just look like I tried to get it in the middle and failed if I put it over to one side. There we go. So that's those 2, and then once again I can now place my piece in the middle. Sandy says thank you, just but she needs more Christmas cards. That's okay, Sandy, put them away for next year. Or put them in a bag, tie a bow around them and give them to somebody who hasn't had a chance to make their own. You might have a new neighbour or someone. Sandy moved house, well, longer ago now probably than it seems, but Sandy moved house relatively recently. So you might have some new neighbours or friends who'd appreciate some handmade cards. So that's my 2 note cards. Actually, I really like these. And Triana, hello, welcome. What size are my card bases, please? Okay, I've got 2 sizes, Triana. So these here are Stampin' Up note cards. So they come straight from the pack, and they are 5, I think they're 5 by 3.5. I'm just going to measure it on my grid paper. Yeah, so these, once they're folded, they measure 5 tall by 3.5 wide, but they're just straight from the note card pack. And my others are half a sheet of A4 card. Oops, I've just hit my camera, sorry if that wobbled. So these with the fold vertical on them, so this is just half a sheet of A4 that I've just scored like that. The other 2 are a sheet of A4 that I cut in half the other way, so long ways if you like, and then scored across. Does that help? Does that give you the information you needed? All right, now if you were listening earlier, you'll have heard me say that there were going to be 5 cards. So this again is half a sheet of A4. These are all those little strips I was getting you to cut. and I'm just going to put them on here in size order. So these are all the little bits that I might have been tempted to throw away, but actually I'm going to stick them on like this. Now you can play with the spacing. I'm going to stamp a sentiment on the bottom first, but I'm just kind of putting these on here to get a kind of a feel for how they go. So I think something like that is going to work for me. Oh great, Andriana, that is what you needed to know. I'm pleased. So I'm just going to bring this back. I might put the sentiment in the middle this time, I think. There we are. And I'm going to stick the strips on. If I put these others back, that will just make sure that I don't leave too much space, just to give me some sort of idea. So, you know, I'm doing this by eye. I'm not measuring things exactly. You could measure if you wanted, if you knew that it would really irritate you to have varying spaces between the pieces, then of course you can measure them. If you've got grid paper, the grid paper can be really helpful for that too. Sandy's saying it's a good idea to give some cards away. Absolutely. Spread the joy, Sandy. Alright, get this little last piece on. This is very narrow. There we are. So that is the last card. Now you could stop here. Some of them certainly look completely finished and would be fine with nothing else on them. These two, for me, need something else. So I am going to put a sentiment on them. Sorry, they go up that way. I have got a couple of little strips of card, which I am hoping are going to be the right size for my sentiments. And I'm using the same sentiment again because I do like it. Hopefully I can stamp it straight. Camera is where I really want my eyes to go. So let's try. Not too bad. The other one the same. There we go. I'm going to ink the edges of these. But I haven't sponged any ink across the card, just so there's a little bit more of a contrast with my other layer with the stamping on it. There we are. So I can play with this now. I can put it at a jaunty angle. I can put it down the bottom. I could put it across the middle. I can stick it flat. I can add some dimensionals. There's all kinds of things that I can do with that. I tend to make quite dimensional cards naturally if I don't think about it, so I think I will stick this flat and save myself a little bit on postage when I come to send it. So put that across the middle, and then I'm just going to look at everything and see if anything needs anything else. I did die cut myself some snowflakes from Balmy Blue Glimmer Paper, and I also have some of the Adhesive-Backed snowflakes, and I've got Rhinestones, so there are a few things that I could be adding on here. So let's have a look. Let's pull out some of these Balmy Blue snowflakes because they are just so sparkly. So this is using the dies that coordinate with the stamp set, and I can never remember the name of them. So Many Snowflakes, that's it. So these are the dies, and I've cut So Many Snowflakes from Balmy Blue Glimmer Paper. So I've got them in various sizes. Some of them are just so delicate and pretty. So let's have a look at this card, see what it needs. Oops, I'm just going to move that mat out of the way. So 2 or 3 of these I think might be nice. So what are we thinking? Do we like this, ladies? So let's add some of these on this one. Fine tip glue is perfect for this kind of die cut, but I don't get on with it until there's not much left in the bottle. I think I must be too heavy-handed. I always end up with great big puddles of it. So I just use my Old Faithful multi-purpose glue and just use some tiny dots. Oh, Lorraine thinks this looks good. Thank you, Lorraine. There we go. So that card for me is now finished. Oops. Let's do something similar on the other one. Let's use some different shaped snowflakes. And I'm just putting a little tiny dot of glue wherever I've got a slightly larger area. And I'm putting the bigger snowflake down at the bottom because for me that kind of pulls the weight downwards, as your visual weight I suppose you would say, as I'm looking at the card, and just seems to give me the effect I want. And then I think I might pull out my self-adhesive snowflakes for one of the others for a bit of a change. I thought I'd take about an hour. I'm fractionally over that now, so I hope I'm not holding anybody up. Mary's saying 3 works well. Yes, there's something magical about odd numbers, Mary, isn't there? Yeah, I tend to use odd numbers a lot, and 3 seems about right on this. I'm tempted to add more and more, but I am going to make myself stop there. Rosie's saying it's great, but what a mess she's made. Never mind, Rosie. I think that's a sign of an afternoon well spent. All right, so I think I might put some more of these cut out snowflakes on here maybe. Yeah, I quite like them coming across where I've got the gaps between the strips. I mean, you know, you could play endlessly, couldn't you, with die cut snowflakes, and I quite like cutting a few out to start with, and then I can, you know, pick and mix from what I've got. I'm particularly satisfied with this one to have used up those little strippy pieces that I must admit I quite often throw away. I do so much crafting, not just for myself, but for classes and other things as well, that I end up with endless scraps, and I would be drowning in them if I didn't throw some away. But it's quite nice to use them and not have so many left. There we go. So there's 3 of those on there. Now, what have I done with my little snowflakes? Here they are. So if you haven't seen these little snowflake embellishments, they are beautiful. They have a sticky dot on the back of them, so they're really, really easy to use. They're like little sequins. They're iridescent, but you get kind of two different iridescences. This one has got lots of blue and green on it, although it's also got kind of pink and yellow as well. And this one is much pinker, although it does have blue and green as well. So they are really beautiful. So just for a change, I'm going to add a few of those to this one, just so you can see what they look like. And again, I will aim to put them on fairly randomly, and use some odd numbers. So I won't use, you know, 6, I'll use 7 or 5. It's 5, 2 more I think. There we are. And if I tilt that, you can hopefully just see a little bit of sparkly iridescence on there. They're so pretty. That one I think I'm just going to leave. I do really like the simplicity of that one. There's these two. I might just bring in a couple of rhinestones so we can see how those look as well. So these are the tiny ones. The packs have an assortment of sizes, 3 different sizes. I've just got the little ones here, and let's have a look. Just focus on the snowflake centers. I think I've got 3 snowflakes here with clear centers, so I like that. And I can probably do something similar on this, although the snowflakes are in a different place, so it won't look the same. Didn't want that one there. Let's try again. And one more. Just there. Okay, so that's those 2 with rhinestones on them. All right, so finally, I'm not going to decorate all the envelopes, but I will just do one to show you something that you could do. And then you can, if you're going to do any more envelopes yourself, if you like to decorate your envelopes, you'll have an idea for those as well. But I am aware that time is ticking on, so I mustn't take too much longer. So I'm just going to stamp this using some of the same images I used earlier and doing a little bit of stamping off in the same way. I suspect my ink pads are off camera, but it's the same kind of thing I was doing before. And then I'm just going to do a little bit of sponging as well. Where are my sponges? Move the mat out of the way. There we are. So I sponged over the area, and I've also extended it along the 2 edges, and then I'll do just a tiny bit with that darker Night of Navy. And there we are. There is a decorated envelope. Now I could have stamped all along the bottom. I could have done opposite corners. I could do the flap. There's lots you can do to decorate an envelope. So do finish your envelopes off. Don't send them naked through the post. I'm going to bring in all the cards now for you to see. And then finally, I'm just going to show you a couple I made using exactly the same method, but different colours and different stamps to give you an alternative. So will I be able to fit all these on? I'm not quite sure, but let's try. I don't think I'll get them all in at once. I'm going to have to move some around, I think. Let's overlap these. There we go. That might work. Wait now and see what you can see on my iPad. I don't know what the delay is, but it's a good 20 or 30 seconds. Okay, so what I will do, I think I'll space them out better, and I will just move my grid paper a little bit to and fro so you can see. There we go. And I'll put some photographs up as well later. So I move that across. You can hopefully see those last few. So please take some photographs of your cards and pop them in the comments for the video, or you can email them to me or messenger them to me. That would be really nice. I would love to see them, and everybody else would too, I know. So here are a couple of alternatives. So these are made with the Poinsettia Petals stamp set, which I'm sure some of you have. And I used Blushing Bride and Rococo Rose for the ink. And I think that's too high. There we go. Is that better? And I worked with Very Vanilla card instead of white. So that's the difference with this. I did stamping off again. I've done some sponging. My larger panel here, I actually then cut into 3 for that one there. So, you know, you obviously still can continue to cut down. So that's an alternative if you don't want to do snowflakes. So thank you so much for joining me today. It's been really lovely. I've enjoyed spending time with you. I hope you'll do some stamping, and I hope you'll show me what you make. And then I'm going to be back here next week at 2 o'clock, next Friday afternoon at 2 o'clock. And it's going to be all about line images next week. So if you've got any stamps with line drawn images, then have those at the ready. I'll put a new event on my Facebook page which will tell you a little bit more about what to have by you if you want to craft along with me. So look out for that in a few days' time, probably early next week. So thank you so much for joining me. I've loved seeing you. And I will see you again next week. Have a really good weekend. Take care. Bye-bye.